How does the school system dedicate itself to serving the best interests of students, their achievement, and their future success? DoDEA Director Tom Brady talks about this and more coming up next in this edition of The Chat Room. Welcome to The Chat Room. I'm your host, Frank O'Gara, and joining me today is the Director of the Department of Defense Education Activity, Mr. Thomas Brady. Mr. Brady has recently completed his first 100 days with DoDEA. As promised in his entry plan, he engaged stakeholders around the world to look, listen, ask questions, and learn about the DoDEA school system. In his recently published report, My First 100 Days, DoDEA's Strategic Way Forward, Director Brady shared his first impressions of the current state of our school system and the direction he believes our school system must take if we are to become a model, unified, college and career-ready school system. Here to discuss his findings and the way ahead for DoDEA is Director Tom Brady. Welcome back to the chat room, Mr. Brady.
Well, thanks, Frank.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Okay.
Good to see you.
You had a long trip, a big trip.
Yes, it was. It was.
Tell us a little bit about your rationale for the entry plan when you became the director.
I think it's critical when a senior leader takes over an organization, no matter what kind of experience or what issues that they've had in the past with large organizations. It's critical not to leap to judgments and to make any future decisions that has to be based on fact. And the best way to get the facts is to go out and meet people.
Yeah.
So I think we did 27,400 miles.
Amazing.
And 72 schools, and met with parents, and met with commanders, met with, most importantly, teachers. And the best part was to meet with students in a number of schools. And from that, you get not only a feel for where the organization is, but you get some very, very important takeaways that shape where you think the organization should go.
Well, let's talk about some of those impressions. What were your impressions?
Well, the first one was I was really very, very impressed with the dedication of the teachers and the administrators. I was very proud of that. They are there to help students. I was impressed by the enthusiasm and the energy of the students. And I liked the parent concern and parent activism from what I could see. And so those were very, very positive things.
How did you arrive at the strategic focus that you now have from these impressions and from the visits?
It's clear, and everybody looks through their own lenses. And so as I outlined in the report, my 15-year experience in education as superintendent and chief operating officer was primarily in urban districts in the United States. And urban districts, for a host of reasons, are challenged every day by a number of issues. The most important is resources. And between federal government, state government, and local government cutbacks, it puts tremendous pressure on the local district. And unfortunately, for the last at least 10 years, have been going through a series of cuts, and dramatic cuts, depending on the place. So the thing that really struck me is the Department of Defense commitment to DoDEA and the children of the active duty service members, and that commitment shows itself in proper resourcing, in both the operational side and particularly on the capital side, where we have new construction and renovation and repair. So it's a remarkable thing to have the resources necessary to do the things that we need to do to make a good system better.
And that's not always evident, particularly to our people overseas, when you're operating far from home, to realize what neighboring school systems in the States would be going through.
And that's totally understandable, and I caveated all my remarks, and I think we had like 30 all-hands meetings with everybody who could come. I said, I understand. If you've been in DoDEA, thank you for your dedication, and if you've been here for 10 or 20 years, you don't realize what's going on the other side. It's not a fault, it's just that you're not aware. And so I think some of us take it for granted, but many of us who are new to the system or recent transfers from the public sector are amazed at the great resourcing that the Department of Defense continues to pledge.
For sure, for sure. Yeah. Let's talk about your first priority, and that's strengthening the standards-based educational system that we have.
Yeah, I think the key, and again, we have standards and we're a good system, and we are doing well by our students. There's no question on that. But the issue becomes, how can we become better? How can we improve? And I am convinced that when you have an aligned instruction system, where you have established standards that demonstrates itself through an aligned curriculum with scope and sequence, the proper resources and tools to make that happen, and a professional development package to explain to administrators and teachers and to help guide it and help form it, and an assessment package of assessment tools to show whether we have met those standards. That is absolutely the right course that we're on. And I think it's college and career ready standards that we're looking at. And it's very much like the Common Core that we hear so much about, that's politicized. And I don't want to talk about that. What I want to talk about is college and career ready. But the process is very much the same. You have established standards that are aligned, an assessment tool, professional development package, and I think that will demonstrate that academic achievement is what we're all about, and it can be accomplished.
What will it mean for teachers in our classrooms?
Well, I think teachers, they'll be the focal point, and they will have the proper professional development and the proper, well, actually they will help decide or help craft and help design that aligned instruction system, in the sense of having a say in the standards and how they will be executed in terms of scope and sequence. I've been through this in another city where it was, you can do it two ways. You can hand it to somebody and say, here it is, and then there's no ownership in that. Or you say, here are the standards, could you help us understand? Could you help us organize and help us do a scope and sequence, and then they become part of the formulation, which is completely different. And there's ownership, and I think that's critical.
Absolutely. What about students? What's the value added here for students?
Well, I think students, well, first of all, in this, as we look at the future, our students have to be prepared to do any number of things. And so if we talk about college and career, not only would be the post-graduation higher education, but it also will address those students who aren't quite ready to go to college or don't want to go to college for a number of different reasons. And they'll be on a solid, they'll have the foundation to do exceedingly well in whatever they choose. And I think that the increased standards will manifest itself within a 2 or 3 year period.
Okay. Your second priority is all about developing or establishing the capacity organizationally to support student achievement. What's that going to look like?
Well, I think what we have is now, I think recall, one of the impressions that I had was organizational fatigue from too many things going on. And so what I want to do is narrow that focus. And what I see is that we are totally dedicated to implementing an aligned instruction system that will take care, that will help us focus and shift resources to take care of that priority. And I think it offers a wonderful opportunity to help the organization focus on that goal.
Where do we start?
We've already started. But I think that there's a number of things. We start from the school, and everything's about the school, the teacher, and the student in the classroom. So and organizational change does not come easy. And it doesn't happen overnight. So we focus on the school and student, and we back up to the headquarters. And we look at what do we need as the first few steps to implement the college and career curriculum. So I think that as I've looked, I think we have an education directorate that is full of dedicated people, but they're not aligned properly to begin the work of the college and career ready implementation. So the first is to redesign the education directorate to best support the superintendents in schools. And that's number one. number 1A is to look at human resources and see what within human resources, and again, it's not the people or the talent or the people's dedication, it's what processes, systems, and procedures can we change to deliver the best talent and take care of the talent that we have. And so we'll do a re-engineering of HR, and we'll do a redesign of the Education Directorate to both address our state-level policy requirements and our district-level requirements. And that's 12 months, 2 years process. In the meantime, we are begin the execution of the aligned curriculum.
What do we say to people that have said, well, we've reorganized before, we've been there before? How is this different?
There's, that's a quote for that bogus quote from allegedly a Roman general who said, we trained, we became team, and we trained, and we were very proficient, and then we reorganized. I think that it's clear that if you start from where you want to be at the end of the day and you backward plan, you can align resources and human talent to best support that goal. We're not reorganizing for the sake of reorganization. We are reorganizing with a goal in mind for each one of the directorates, and that will filter down through the areas and eventually to the schools. And so it's not a form. It is functional, and it is, I think, critical to further the mission.
Now, you mentioned somewhat of a timeline. Is there a timeline for all of this?
Yes, certainly. Well, there's a timeline. I think I'd have to answer that negatively, and I don't normally like to do that, but it's something I heard as a lieutenant. If you want it bad, you get it bad. And so I think in the case of this, it's not time isn't the dimension, it's the quality and the thoroughness of doing it. Mm-hmm. This is hard work. This is changing a system. This is a 4 or 5 year endeavor. If I arbitrarily say by year 2 we want to do this and year 3 we want to do that, then that shifts the focus to time as opposed to thoroughness. I would prefer thorough, flexible approach than an arbitrary decision to say within 3 years we'll have it all done, because I don't think so. Mm-hmm. It's going to be a very difficult process, and people will understand the importance and see the results, and it'll become, I think, worth the effort.
What do you expect from our employees as we begin to address these priorities?
I think that in all of the all-hands meetings that I've had all over the world with our great DoDEA workers, employees, the one thing or a few things that came across is when I talked about the 3 impressions that I had, more often than not there was an agreement or concurrence in what I had seen. Then I put out the 100-day report and sent it to every employee, and the feedback I'm getting from employees are, you're on the right track. We need to focus, we need priorities, and we need to assign resources to those priorities. So based on that sample, and based on my discussion with employees, I believe that the time is right for people to see a potentially better way to do business in student achievement and increasing student achievement. So I think we'll have some, from an employee perspective, teachers, administrators, this is the right track and the right thing to do.
How important is that input to you, that feedback from employees?
You know, it's actually critical. We can sit here in a headquarters and come up with all these great designs and implementation of the system. And we forget sometimes that there's schools, and there's teachers, and there's students, and there's parents. And the further we get away from that, the worse it'll be. And so what I want to do is have some that's why I think traveling is very important, getting out to see people without a filter. And so it's an opportunity to go out and see, get reaction, and for people to help shape it. I read the other day, everyone knows it, but nobody washes a rental car. And what I mean by that is that you rent a car, you leave your garbage in, you turn it back in, nobody's going to wash it, right? There's no ownership. You rented it. But when people own something, it becomes important. They become part of, it becomes theirs. And that's exactly what I want to do.
How about parents and commanders and communities? What do you need from them as we begin to address these priorities?
I think it's not so much what I need from them, it's what that I owe them. We, as DoDEA, we need to keep them informed of what we intend to do and the progress. They participated in the development of the community strategic plan. This is not a variation of that just is taking 2 or 3 things from the community plan and executing. So we need to keep them informed. What we want is their active participation. We want their feedback. We want them to be involved as we go forward. As you know, every study indicates that as soon as a parent walks in the door, student achievement improves. So we're partners. We need that. We need commanders to assist in being aware of the schools and letting us know what we can do to assist them as they go forward with their mission. Our mission is to improve student achievement. They have a very, very important mission to keep us safe. So it's a mutually supportive relationship.
How are you going to keep these stakeholders informed as we move ahead? Have we thought about that?
Well, we have, I think, it's not just me. It's everybody in the organization, but I think I noticed that there was some great relationships between the principals and superintendents with commanders, local commanders. The 3 area leaders are very, very close to the senior commanders. And so that dialogue and that information flow is terrific. I just reinforce it on occasion. So it's really the people who work for us in the key leadership positions to keep them informed.
Is there anything else you want to add today about?
Well, I think that there's, it's critical from my perspective for our teachers, administrators, students, parents to understand that this is a journey. And the ultimate goal is to make sure that we can improve student achievement. I see that this is the best way forward to improve student achievement and help prepare them for the next steps with college and career. And I think that if we're working together, keeping each other informed, and we are allocating the right resources and have professional development as a complete package, I think that this will be a great step forward. I'm honored to be part of this, and it's such a great opportunity.
Well, I'm certain that our stakeholders around the world, our employees, our parents, our commanders, appreciate your enthusiasm, your vision, and certainly the priorities that you've laid out for us for the future. We look forward to talking more with you about this as we work through it.
Well, thank you, Frank. I appreciate that.
You can find a copy of the Director's Report, My First 100 Days, DoDEA's Strategic Way Forward, on our website. I'm Frank O'Gara. Thank you for joining us in this edition of The Chat Room.